If you've been here on the channel for a while, you'll know that a lot of the villains in our real life tales of real life K-drama really comes down to bullying and how the people around the bullying situation really don't stand up for the victim or are confused as to who the real victim is and who the real bully is, which is a number in it of itself, because it should be very clear who like if it was a murder situation and you're confused over who the murderer is, then good luck. Good luck getting out of that one when the murderer turns their attention to you. But we have a case of a real life situation of the glory. K-drama, amazing. It was a revenge tale about an extremely bullied individual who goes and gets her revenge. But one of the major villains was a weathercaster at a news station who used her position in society to bully everybody else. Well, it looks like we have a real life situation, and unfortunately, in real life, there was a tragic consequence. Real bullying has real consequences, and in this case, a weathercaster over at MBC had been found unalived in September of last year. There were questions around what had happened, but it was not talked about until now, when the victim's family is suing, because it turns out that they have found evidence in numerous places, but also including on the weathercaster's phone, that they unlocked a 17-page final letter and will where she outlined the horrific abuses she faced over at the MBC newsroom. So the victim's name is Oh Yoanna, and she passed away at the age of 28 on September 15th, 2024. And this was the actual real case of bullying that should have gone to a hearing at the National Assembly. There are currently about 5 related lawsuits, at least from what I can see in the media, regarding this case. Now that it has got the attention in the court of law and the court of public opinion and the police investigation involved, people are paying attention. But where has everybody been for the past 4 months? That's part of what the victim's family is saying to MBC, the broadcaster. So MBC is one of the major 3 broadcasting networks in Korea: MBC, SBS, and KBS. And so they're not seen in a good light right now. They look like they had been dodging responsibility, and even until now, dodging responsibility. So 2 civil lawsuits are being waged against the actual individuals who are accused of bullying this family's daughter. And 3, it looks like anonymous activist petitions by the same anonymous activist against the company and heads of departments. And it looks like a much more savvy legal picture. People are understanding a lot more about labor law and the limits of labor law because she was a freelancer. Freelancer, so that means she is not covered by any of the labor laws. And that was a similar conclusion when Honey did her Big Dog and Pony show, when everybody knew she was not a regular employee, and yet she went out to the National Assembly as if she were and would be protected by those laws, but she wasn't. Now all the lawmakers, of course, they're supposed to be caretakers of law, had to say like, oh yeah, it doesn't apply to her. So unfortunately, in her situation, the labor laws don't apply, but already we see that the legal and the criminal filings are accommodating for that fact. That's why we're seeing a civil case from the family against the individuals and not the corporation in terms of it, being like a labor issue. And then the 3 anonymous activists' complaints against the company are more criminal in nature, and we'll go over that a little bit later. So, Oh Yoanna, who was she? 28 years old, but she was actually a former idol trainee with JYP, I believe. And there you go. That's one source of jealousy. She seemed to have this natural ability, even though, she's a weathercaster, but if you look at the totality of, where she pops up in the broadcast industry as a freelancer, as she should, she seems to earnestly grab, attention, the spotlight, and be able to talk and fill space genuinely. And again, that is also something that makes you a target from people in the broadcasting world who may be jealous of that. She also filmed her acceptance, which I thought was really cute. And her parents, or one of her parents, it seems, was hugging her and saying she did such a great job. And again, that would send a bully into a tailspin. Because normal people think that, okay, a hug and an encouragement and celebrating this milestone achievement of being selected as, I believe, 1 out of 6 weathercasters at MBC is a huge deal. And so getting a hug from your parent is just normal. And if you are just an observer, you probably think like, oh, that's kind of cute, that's sweet. But you would, I think, have to sort of force yourself to kind of come up with emotions, because that's not you, it's not your family, it's not your situation, it's not even your business. And so unless you've also had a similar situation of like maybe getting an audition of something and it relives your experience, I don't think it really makes it, it's just more of like objectively, oh, that is really cute. But to a bully who's otherwise dead emotionally, it sparks rage, because they are so jealous of that type of love. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of things that she probably, and most victims of bullying probably did not realize, makes them targets of bullying, because normal people don't overvalue certain things that lead them to this state of jealous rage. Normal people just kind of think that it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's great. But to these bullies, I mean, horrible situation. So May 2021 is when she was selected after a grueling process, and apparently 5 months later, October 2021, that's when the bullying started and never ended. And it intensified, according to the victim's family, after she made an appearance on You Quiz on the Block, which is a big variety entertainment, sort pseudo reality show, interview show that, yes, even New Jeans Mama made an appearance on, if you're kind of wondering like, oh wait, I think I've seen that before. So she appeared on December 6, 2022, and apparently the bullying just got worse after that. Like I said, she was found on September 15th, 2024. So this is years long, about 3 years long of an ordeal and pain. And she had a 17-page will discovered on her phone. What kind of bullying had been documented and reported by the family and investigators so far during the initial investigation? So, like I said, there were about 6 weathercasters, and so she was new, and there was another girl that was newer than her. Those 2 seemed to have been the victims, and then there were 4 who were in the mean pressure system club, and it looked like there were 2 active high pressure storms and then 2 passive low pressure storms among the bullies. And we also know this very clearly because they've left a paper trail on a Kakao Talk chat room where they just rip her apart. Originally, she was part of this, chat group, and you're supposed to, like communicate amongst the different weathercasters because there's a lot of baton passing and, just to coordinate. But it became this forum for bullying, and then so she had to leave that Kakao Talk room. But then, we have the evidence of them continuing it on. And they say like, oh, she's completely insane. She smells. That expletive talked back when we gave her attention. And then they even bring up the glory itself. But then they are thinking that they're the victim. So they said even Yeonjin, who was the antagonist from the glory, was good at broadcasting, but she, the victim, is just playing the victim when we're actually the victims. Where have we heard this before? What playbook have we seen this in? Also, it seems that mistakes were just falsely blamed on her. Yep, that's a common tactic. And then when she tried to correct and defend herself, she got blamed as a junior daring to correct a senior. So there again, you see the bullies just hiding behind the cultural and social rules that govern age, which originally was supposed to be used for elders having a little bit more wiggle room and resources to take care of the younger people. That's why you respect the older people. But this has totally been weaponized, where it traps you in the sense in this system where they just tear you apart and you can't do anything about it because no one's going to come to your defense because they don't want to challenge that social rule of, oh, we must maintain the sanctity of this social custom of respecting our elders. And of course, drama is always happening inside and outside the makeup studio. There's no joke. Yes, I've seen this firsthand. And the family said that it was almost like a scene from the, how is this translated? But like the makeup studio chief sister, like Wang Onni is what, like, king, it literally means king older sister. So basically like she's the queen bee, like Queen Bee's makeup room. Queen Bee's makeup studio, something like that. And here's a trigger warning. According to the family members, her first attempt was on a bridge on September 6th in walking distance of the studio in Mapo, in that part of Seoul. Non-related grandma, so this lady of a grandma age, saved her life and asked her, like pulled on her hair and said, like, why were you doing this? And then Yoanna said that she was miserable at work. Her back was aching. It felt like her intestines were going to snap. So this is a person in severe, like, emotional trauma to the point where now it's showing up physically. She said that living was too much pain. She wanted to relieve her suffering. The family said that, okay, fine, you should go get hospitalized for like 6 months. But Yoanna said, no, I have to do my broadcasting. And then apparently she got some commercials. So then she had to do her commercials, which of course would lead to more bullying. And then she claimed that, no, I'm not gonna do anything else. I was just acting out in frustration. However, she did try again. And then 9 days later, she was found on September 15th. Now, the family only wants two things. They want the truth to be revealed and an adequate apology. Although, again, you can't sue for an apology. This is why I think, this is why I totally, believe the family and looking at all of the evidence. But usually, if you are in it for real justice, you're not really looking for stuff. You're looking for an apology, like you're looking to resolve the emotional trauma, but the court doesn't not get at that unless it has a dollar tag on it or some sort of like physical property damage, like let's compensate you for something. Like it's as far as I know, you can't sue for an apology. But that's what I think really does show, like, an earnest attempt. Now, the family also accuses MBC of covering up what was really going on and what led to this death. They said that not even an obituary announcement was distributed at the company, and MBC even apparently said that, oh, well, the family didn't want this. They wanted it to be private, but the family was like, no, not at all. And why is this important. This is important as more of like a reading between the lines, or kind of like if you can read body language of a situation. In Korea, if you pass away, it is like standard that you have like a company announcement, like over email or something that announces the funeral, and then really like where you can send some bereavement money to the family. And not doing it is like a big sign. There's something fishy about that. And the family said that they had heard that somebody higher up at MBC said like, no, we're putting the kibosh on all of this. That's more of, I think, a cultural conviction. I don't know legally whether that has any teeth, but they do say, the family says that they have an audio recording that they're considering whether or not to release that does show that their daughter brought up this issue with people at the company. Because the company is saying that, well, she never said anything, so that's why we didn't know. And if she had reported it, then we would have gotten to the bottom of it. Which in and of itself, almost every Korean person probably would be like, yeah, right. First of all, she was a freelancer, so total discrimination and no rights. So if there's literally, like, if you kind of imagine if you are HR in that company and you're just like, okay, we have these labor laws, but they only apply to regular employees. Why are we going to waste our time when the law doesn't even apply to the freelancers? And then, do you think that she would have brought it up? This is why I think she's totally telling the truth, because the victims usually try to downplay what's going on or resolve it themselves, or try to twist the facts in their mind where this is like, this person can't be that bad, because that would just mean that this person's a monster or crazy or like a psychopath. There must be something I'm missing here. Maybe it was my fault. She even had documented, like, in conversations, like, this is the worst horrible situation, but what if I'm wrong about this? Whereas the bully is always trying to say they're the victim, everybody else is wrong, and the focus is usually on like making a big theatrical dramatic thing about how somebody else is wrong. Whereas the problem a lot of times with victims is that they're not stating their case really strong because they don't want to be seen as a victim. They don't want to make accusations. Like, the more normal person would not be so like, this is my talking point and I'm going to bring that person down. It's more of like trying to apologize for the horrible behavior of somebody else. Although that is definitely not advisable, and we know how far that Jezebel Institute of Treachery stretches and where it can go and how many people can be hurt, including Oh Yoanna. On top of this, it looks like she only earned about $1,000 a month, if that, given the exchange rate currently, getting up before dawn and going to the studio every day. Now, this is a problem I know firsthand of the broadcasting industry in Korea, is that they do like a hybrid blend of freelancers and then regular employees. In theory, I think that's actually quite a good system because it creates like this release valve and flexibility in your labor pool. However, it creates also a situation where there's like little oversight and there's a lot of room for abuse. And so the theory is like, why should get paid so little, even though the minimum wage is about $1,800 a month, like 180만 원 to 220만 원, and she was getting 130만 원, so 1.3 million won a month. And so the theory is that, like, okay, if you're a freelancer, then this is not your only job, and this is not, the only amount of time that you're here in the office. So you should theoretically have a lot more time to do other things. And in some cases, that is true. And in some cases, you need to have a freelancing system so that, a celebrity, or even just if you're a pseudo celebrity, just going from station to station and appearing on shows. However, once you get into this type of weathercaster job, news anchor type of job. Even if you're called a freelancer, the amount of time you have to spend at the office then starts to really mirror a regular employee. And if you go through all of the checklists of what differentiates a freelancer and a regular employee, there is no difference. However, the court and the legal system still conveniently, when it suits them, just separates them so that you're not protected under labor law. So you're essentially slave labor. And so in a freelance situation, then she could theoretically just do her newscast or her weathercast from home and email it in. That is the actual definition of a freelancer. You're given a deliverable, and you just deliver the deliverable on the agreed upon time and conditions, and you use your own equipment. However, that's impossible when you're doing the weather report within a news program. You have to be in studio, you have to use their green screen, you have to use their lights, you have to use their computer, you have to use all of their equipment, and those types of things makes you more on the category of a regular employee, especially when you take orders from people above you. As a freelancer, essentially be like, I don't take orders from anybody. I just deliver the weather report. I can email it in and use my camera at home. Like, that's essentially what a true freelancer situation would be. But she was in the office at the crack of dawn and working all of these hours, probably more than 8 hours, and yet getting less than minimum wage. However, according to the law, certainly similar in my situation, if you take one other little freelance thing, which you're supposed to do because you get paid less than regular, you are then seen by the court as, oh, well, it looks like you think you're a freelancer because you took other work. So they kind of trap you in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And there are calls now for more justice for freelancers, and even among Koreans. They did a survey because 1 out of 4 Korean people have worked under a freelance system at some time of their life, but over half of them didn't realize that the actual labor laws do not apply to them as a freelancer. So all the wonderful labor laws and the strict labor laws in Korea, they have so many. It almost seems like there's too much labor laws, but none of that applies to a freelancer. Unless they change things here and there, they've been trying to reform the system a little bit, but it looks like from this situation, they did not get very far. And if you're like, wait a minute, MBC, where have I heard this before, especially in relation with HYBE? Yup, yes. MBC was the broadcasting station that had it out for HYBE. In 2019, there was a situation where BTS could not attend the major year-end music show because they had to go do one in the United States. So MBC felt jilted, or essentially the producer of that show probably felt jilted, and they were banned and hated on for 3 years or 4 years until Chairman Bang Si-hyuk went over to make amends at MBC, and there the MBC president said that we have to correct our past wrong and outdated practices that caused harm and hurt to HYBE artists. And in particular, he said, we agreed to improve the long-standing flawed production culture between broadcasting and entertainment companies and to create an environment for content production with mutual respect and consideration. Essentially, all of that is corporate talk for saying that, like, sorry, yes, we understand we have like a corporate cultural problem, most likely bullying, and we're going to try to fix that. So yes, MBC now has been accused of having a long-standing bullying culture, although I'll say like almost in every broadcasting station, probably every company, every organization in this world has like this bullying problem, but it's a lot more intense, I believe, in media because, you know, sometimes when I compare stories, I'm just like, yeah, this is my war story. And then somebody else like compares their war story. I was like, honey, that's like not even a battle. That's like a pre-planning battle. Like, what you talking about? Like, that's the extent of the dysfunction over there. Anyhow, so when you look at these music programs, they're coming from a culture where in the past you actually, as the entertainment company, had to bribe the music producer, and they kind of had like so much power to let your artists onto the show. So I'm not saying that that happens anymore, although I believe a few years ago there was still like a scandal where some kind of bribery system was happening, but essentially they're trying to clean that up. But in any case, especially if you're losing that asserted power, like unquestioned power like that to the point where you're being paid, then don't you think these producers are like, usually bullying starts to happen when you feel like you are losing your dominance over people and you want to assert it. You can't assert it through actual mechanisms, and now you're just doing it through like pettiness. So the Bereaved family is suing two people, but there's one main person that is being identified. I mean, the families, I mean, this is what I think should happen. Like, this is a good case, I believe, where the family's just like, look, we've seen, they've probably seen what has happened when you're trying to take too much of a demure approach to this. They named all the names, although it's not that hard because there's only 6 of them. 2 of them are the victims, including their daughter, and then the other 4 already named and in the evidence of her phone as the perpetrators. And so they're going after them civilly because you can't do it under the HR system or the company system like that. And MBC itself is facing 3 legal actions against it, initiated by an unidentified person who made these filings mainly to the police. This is where it seems quite savvy. Like, they know, like a normal person would be like, this is such a labor violation, we're gonna, kind of go through it. But then it's so easy for MBC to say like, sorry, she was a freelancer and like none of these laws apply. So they're going after these other laws. One is the Serious Accidents Punishment Act in connection with the workplace harassment targeting. Then there's a filing with the Ministry of Employment and Labor, and then also with the police against the MBC president, and then the department heads, and also the colleagues, with allegations including incitement to destroy evidence, occupational negligence resulting in death, and violations of the Stalking Punishment Act. So whoever is filing these claims really knows the law and already is accepting that, like, look, this cannot go under like a labor law situation because it won't apply to her. We got to go straight to Stalking Punishment Act and Serious Accidents Punishment Act. And then also whatever filing with the Ministry of Employment and Labor. So very savvy. Now, other former Weathercasters at MBC have spoken up publicly. This is what I love about this situation. People are very upfront and frank. This is a different world than definitely 10, 15 years ago when I seen that people just sort of didn't want to be involved or wouldn't really stand up or really show up to support their fellow victims. And so a former Weathercaster, Pae Soo-yeon, said that it was the same when I left MBC. She started in 2005 and left in 2010. That was a long time ago. And then she said that as a mere freelance Weathercaster, no one paid attention to what I said. I loved my job and my workplace, but I saw its other side. I thought things might have changed by now, but it's shocking that they haven't. Now, another former MBC Weathercaster, Park Eun-jis, said that as a former MBC Weathercaster, my heart feels so heavy. She worked there from 2005 to 2013, also quite a long time ago for nothing to have really changed. And she said that I endured those 7 harsh years, so I understand. I know how terrifying and isolating that pain is. I'm so sorry I couldn't help. The deeply rooted culture of workplace harassment must be fully exposed and brought to an end. Now, this is the problem with the bullying. Yes, it's bad to receive the direct yelling, the sabotage, the snarky comments by the actual perpetrator. But the last Weathercaster really, I think, hit the nail on its head is how isolating it is. Because the bully is trying, and doesn't even have to try that hard, in my opinion, to isolate you. Because the problem with a situation like this is that if you're the victim, like Yoanna was, you sort of don't get a lot of sympathy from the public or even people around you. Maybe they kind of say that they're like, oh, in your corner, but everyone is all kind of secretly a little bit jealous, even though she's making only like $1,000 a month. And that's the problem, because you feel like there is nobody, because everybody is always saying like, oh, but you're a weathercaster. Oh, well, this is just normal in the broadcasting industry. Oh, there might be a misunderstanding. So you're getting signals from everybody around you that if you speak up, you're the problem, and you are making people feel uncomfortable, and thereby making them look at you in a bad light. And you're always then so alone. There's no support system that you can grab onto. And even if you do have a support system, in terms of a powerful support system too, the bully will try to take that down. And so now we also have evidence that Yoanna was friends with another broadcaster, semi-famous actually. He's like one dude that always like showing up everywhere, and he gives good face about like, it's fun to watch. And apparently they exercised together or something, and they had a good relationship. And that Yoanna's main bully was also working with this guy friend. His name is Chang Sung-gyu, and he was on a radio show with the main bully because, the bully just, like everybody, just doesn't do the weather. They try to get onto the other, programs, and she got into his ear saying that, oh, she's a liar. A liar. So then he confronted Yoanna, said like, I heard you lie a lot. Is this true or not? And then she said, no, who told you that? And then he said, well, yeah, that girl. That thing over, the person I worked with. And so she knew who her attackers were. So now apparently the main bully that's being accused, the alleged ringleader of this whole thing, has stepped down from a radio show that she was also on. So there is some sort of fallout a bit now. However, investigation is still ongoing. And that's part of the controversy, because MBC, after doing nothing for 4 months, suddenly, now that there's a lot of national attention on them and 5 pending legal suits, have decided to launch their own internal investigation. But that is already, even National Assembly politicians have been saying, flawed to begin with, because no matter how much internal investigation they do, if they're just going to be following labor laws, which most likely they're just required to do, there's nothing that would make them get in trouble, because none of the labor laws apply to Yoanna. And so there are calls for independent investigations, and it seems as if MBC has said that they are amenable to that as well. However, it depends on, what they're going to do. But in any event, it really won't solve much, because the laws itself totally screw over freelancers. And is the whole freelancer law the culprit here? Yes and no. I mean, the freelance system creates a lot of pockets where abuse can happen, and no formal mechanism with teeth that incentivizes people to deal with it or to take seriously somebody's complaints when a problem is little before it turns into a big conflagration. But on the other hand, it seems as if the Weathercasters, who are also the bullies, were also freelancers. And in some ways, that does perhaps create a problem or it could be culpable because everybody's job is so precarious. When you're under this freelance system, anything goes. Like you can be fired on the spot. And maybe they had a written contract, but when I was working in many places, it was a verbal contract, okay? And they gaslit me and said like, "Oh, that's just the Korean way." And then I checked with other Korean people, they're like, "What?" Yeah. So it could be a situation where the only way to maintain job security in some people's minds, especially if you graduated from the Jezebel Institute of Treachery, is to bully others and get rid of threats and then assert your dominance that way so that you can feel more comfortable and safe in your job, which is already because you're just playing the game of this unfair freelance system, trying to create some sort of structure and stability, even though it's through treachery. And now, let's say, hey, everybody is, in some ways, especially when there's no laws governing labor conditions for freelancers, free to choose to use treachery or not. But thank God there is the law of karma still in effect. And they about to find out how far she goes, because I heard she never forgets an address. So we'll see how this turns out, and many condolences to the victim's family. But I do have to applaud the victim's family for being very bold, upright, strong, clear, seems very decisive, very smart about what they're doing. And I have to think that that is some sort of progress, at least from the victim side of seeing what has happened in Korea over the past 10 years and being very frank about it, and then fighting, knowing that this is the landscape with no kind of delusions about it. I applaud them for making a very strong initial move in a very unfair system. All right, guys, what do you think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.